I never told my son about my $40,000 a month salary, even though he always saw me living a simple life. One day, he invited me to have dinner with his wife's parents, who were visiting from Asia. I decided to see how they would treat a poor person, pretending to be a broke and naive mother. But the moment I walked through the door of that restaurant, everything changed. What happened that night shattered my daughter-in-law and her family in a way they never imagined. And, believe me, they deserved it. Let me explain how I got there. Let me tell you who I really am. Because my son, Julian, at 35 years old, never knew the truth about his mother. To him, I was always that woman who left for the office early, who came home tired at night, who cooked with whatever was in the refrigerator, just another employee, a secretary, perhaps, someone in the crowd, nothing special. And I never corrected him. I never told him that I earned $40,000 every month, that I had been in the management of a multinational corporation for almost 20 years, that I signed multi-million-dollar contracts, that I made decisions that affected thousands of people. Why tell him? Money was never something I needed to hang on the wall like a trophy. I grew up in an era where dignity was carried on the inside, where silence was worth more than hollow words. So I kept my truth. I lived in the same simple apartment for years. I used the same leather handbag until it fell apart. I bought clothes at regular stores. I cooked at home. I saved everything. I invested everything. And I got rich in silence. Because true power doesn't shout. True power observes. And I observed carefully when Julian called me that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, like when he was a boy and had done something wrong. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor. Clara's parents are visiting. From Asia. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. There's a dinner on Saturday at a restaurant. Please, come." Something in his tone made me uncomfortable. It wasn't the voice of a son inviting his mother. It was the voice of someone asking me not to embarrass him, to fit in, to make a good impression. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly. There was a silence. Then Julian stammered. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." There it was, the word, simple, as if my entire life could fit into that miserable adjective, as if I were a problem he needed to apologize for. I took a deep breath, a very deep breath. "All right, Julian, I'll be there." I hung up. I stood there, looking at my apartment's living room. Old but comfortable furniture, walls without expensive paintings, a small TV, nothing to impress anyone. And in that moment, I decided, if my son believed I was a poor woman, if his wife's parents were coming ready to judge, then I would give them exactly what they expected to see. I would pretend to be broke, naive, desperate. A mother who was barely surviving. I wanted to feel firsthand how they treat someone who has nothing. I wanted to see their true faces, because I suspected something. I suspected that Clara and her family were the kind of people who measure others by their wallets, and my instinct is never wrong. Saturday arrived. I dressed in the most awful thing I owned. A light gray, shapeless, wrinkled dress, the kind they sell at flea markets. Old, worn-out shoes. No jewelry, not even a watch. I took a faded fabric purse. I pulled my hair back into a messy ponytail. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman destroyed by life. Forgettable, perfect. But before I continue, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. I promise you. I got into a taxi. I gave the address. A restaurant in the most expensive part of the city, the kind where the menu has no prices, where each table costs more than a normal person's monthly salary. As we drove, I felt something strange. A mix of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because I knew something big was coming. Sadness because a part of me still hoped to be wrong. I hoped they would treat me well, that they would be kind, that they would see beyond the old clothes. But the other part, the one that worked for 40 years among corporate sharks, that part knew exactly what awaited me. The taxi stopped in front of the restaurant. Warm lights, a doorman with white gloves, elegant people walking in. I paid. I got out. I took a deep breath. I walked through the door. And there they were. Julian was standing next to a long table near the windows. He was wearing a dark suit, white shirt, shiny shoes. He looked nervous. Beside him was Clara, my daughter-in-law. She wore a beige dress with gold details, high heels, her hair perfectly straight falling over her shoulders. She looked impeccable, as always. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking towards the entrance with a tense, almost embarrassed expression. And then I saw them, Clara's parents, already seated at the table, waiting like royalty on their thrones. The mother, Diana, wore a tight, emerald green dress full of sparkles, jewels on her neck, on her wrists, on her fingers. Her black hair was pulled back in an elegant bun. She had that kind of cold, calculated beauty that intimidates. Beside her was Arthur, her husband. An impeccable gray suit, a giant watch on his wrist, a serious expression. Both looked like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. I walked towards them, slowly, with short steps, as if I were afraid. Julian saw me first, and his face changed. His eyes widened. He looked me up and down. I noticed him swallow hard. "Mom, you said you were coming." His voice sounded uncomfortable. "Of course, son, here I am." I smiled shyly, a smile of a woman not used to places like this. Clara greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek. Cold, mechanical. "Mother-in-law, how nice to see you." Her eyes said the complete opposite. She introduced me to her parents with a strange tone, almost apologetic. "Dad, Mom, this is Eleanor, Julian's mom." Diana looked up. She looked at me, and in that instant I saw it all. The judgment, the contempt, the disappointment. Her eyes scanned my wrinkled dress, my old shoes, my fabric purse. She didn't say anything at first. She just extended her hand. Cold, quick, limp. "A pleasure." Arthur did the same. A weak handshake, a fake smile. Charmed, I sat in the chair at the end of the table, the farthest from them, as if I were a second-class guest. No one helped me with my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. The waiter arrived with the menus. Elegant. Heavy. In French. I opened one and pretended not to understand anything. Diana was watching me. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, please. I don't know what these words mean." My voice came out small. Timid, she sighed. She ordered for me. "Something simple," she said. "Something that doesn't cost too much. We don't want to go overboard." The sentence hung in the air. Arthur nodded. Julian looked away. Clara fiddled with her napkin. No one said a word, and I just watched. Diana began to speak. First about general things. The trip from Asia, how tiring the flight was, how different everything was here. Then she started talking about money. Subtly at first. She mentioned the hotel where they were staying, $500 a night. She mentioned the car they had rented, a luxury one, obviously. She mentioned the stores they had visited. We bought a few things, nothing crazy, just a few $1,000s. She spoke while looking at me, as if waiting for a reaction, as if expecting me to be impressed. I just nodded. "How nice," I'd say. "How lovely," she continued. "You know, Eleanor, we've always been very careful with money. We work hard. We invest well. Now we have properties in 3 countries. Arthur has important businesses, and I focus on overseeing our investments." She smiled, a smile of superiority. "And you, Eleanor? What do you do exactly?" Her tone was sweet but venomous. "I work in an office," I replied, looking down. "I do a bit of everything. Paperwork, filing, simple things." Diana exchanged a look with Arthur. "Ah, I see. Administrative work. That's good. It's honest. All jobs are dignified, right?" "Of course," I replied. The food arrived. Enormous plates with tiny portions. Everything decorated like art. Diana cut her steak with precision. "This costs $80, she said. "But it's worth it. You pay for quality. One can't just go around eating anything. Right, Eleanor?" I nodded. "Of course. You're right." Julian tried to change the subject. He talked about his work, about some projects. Diana interrupted him. Son, and does your mom live alone? Julian nodded. Yes, she has a small apartment. Diana looked at me with feigned pity. It must be difficult, isn't it? Living alone at your age, without much support. Does your salary cover everything? I felt the trap closing. Barely, I answered. But I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much. Diana sighed dramatically. Oh, Eleanor, you're so brave. Truly. I admire women who struggle on their own. Although, of course, one always wants to give more to their children. You know, give them a better life. But well, everyone gives what they can. There it was, the blow. Gentle but deadly. She was telling me that I hadn't been enough for my son, that I hadn't given him what he deserved, that I was a poor mother. Insufficient. Clara stared at her plate. Julian was clenching his fists under the table, and I just smiled. Yes, you're right. Everyone gives what they can, Diana continued. We always made sure Clara had the best. She studied at the best schools. She traveled the world. She learned 4 languages. Now she has an excellent job. She earns very well. And when she married Julian, well, we helped them out quite a bit. We gave them money for the down payment on their house. We paid for their honeymoon, because that's who we are. We believe in supporting our children. She looked at me intently. And you, Eleanor? Were you able to help Julian with anything when he got married? The question hung in the air like a sharp knife. Not much, I answered. I gave them what I could. A small gift. Diana smiled. How sweet. Every little bit counts, right? It's not the amount, it's the thought that counts. And right there, in that moment, I felt the rage beginning to awaken inside me. The rage wasn't explosive. It was cold, controlled, like a river under ice. I breathed slowly. I maintained the timid smile. I let Diana keep talking, because that's what people like her do. They talk. They inflate themselves. They show off. And the more they talk, the more they reveal themselves. The more they expose themselves, the more they show the emptiness they carry inside. Diana picked up her wine glass. Red. Expensive. She swirled it in her hand as if she were an expert. This wine is from an exclusive region in France. It costs $200 a bottle. But when one knows about quality, you don't skimp. Do you drink wine, Eleanor? Only on special occasions, I replied. And usually the cheapest kind. I don't know much about these things. Aloo. Diana smiled condescendingly. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a trained palate. That comes with experience, with travel, with education. We've visited vineyards in Europe, in South America, in California. Arthur and I are quite knowledgeable. Arthur nodded. It's a hobby, something we enjoy. Clara is also learning. She has good taste. She inherited it from us. He looked at Clara with pride. Clara smiled weakly. Thanks, Mom. Diana turned back to me. And you, Eleanor? Do you have any hobbies? Anything you enjoy doing in your free time? I shrugged. I watch TV. I cook. I walk in the park. Simple things. Diana and Arthur exchanged another look. A look heavy with meaning. Of silent judgment. How lovely, Diana said. Simplicity has its charm, too. Although, of course, one always aspires to more, don't you think? To see the world, to experience new things, to grow culturally. But well, I understand that not everyone has those opportunities. I nodded. You're right. Not all of us have those opportunities. The waiter arrived with dessert. Tiny portions of something that looked like edible art. Diana ordered the most expensive one, $30. For a piece of cake the size of a cookie. This is delicious, she said after the first bite. It has edible gold on top. See? Those little golden flakes. It's a detail only the best restaurants offer. And of course, I took my dessert. Simpler. Cheaper. I ate it in silence. Diana continued. You know, Eleanor, I think it's important we talk about something. As a family. Now that we're all here. She looked up. Her expression changed. It became serious. Maternal. Fake. Julian is our son-in-law. And we love him very much. Clara loves him, and we respect that decision. But as parents, we always want what's best for our daughter. Julian tensed up. Mom, I don't think this is the time. Diana raised her hand. Let me finish, son. This is important. She looked at me. Eleanor, I understand you've done the best you could with Julian. I know raising him alone wasn't easy, and I respect you for that, truly. But now Julian is in a different stage of his life. He's married. He has responsibilities. And well, Clara and he deserve to have stability. Stability? I asked in a soft voice. Yes, Diana replied. Financial stability. Emotional. We have helped a lot. And we will continue to help. But we also believe it's important that Julian doesn't have any unnecessary burdens. Her tone was clear. She was calling me a burden. Me, her son-in-law's mother. Clara stared at her plate as if she wanted to disappear. Julian's jaw was tight. Burdens, I repeated. Diana sighed. I don't want to sound harsh, Eleanor, but at your age, living alone, with a limited salary, it's natural for Julian to worry about you, for him to feel he has to take care of you. And that's fine. He's a good son. But we don't want that worry to affect his marriage. Do you understand? Perfectly, I replied. Diana smiled. I'm glad you understand. That's why we wanted to talk to you. Arthur and I have thought of something. She paused dramatically. We could help you, financially. Give you a small monthly allowance. Something to allow you to live more comfortably, without Julian having to worry so much. Obviously, it would be something modest. We can't work miracles, but it would be a support. I remained silent, looking at her, waiting. She continued. And in return, we would only ask that you respect Julian and Clara's space, that you don't contact them so much, that you don't pressure them, that you give them the freedom to build their life together, without interference. What do you think? There it was, the offer, the bribe disguised as charity. They wanted to buy me. They wanted to pay me to disappear from my son's life, so I wouldn't be a nuisance, so I wouldn't embarrass their precious daughter with my poverty. Julian exploded. Mom, this is enough. You don't have to. Diana interrupted him. Julian, calm down. We're talking like adults. Your mother understands. Right, Eleanor? I picked up my napkin. I calmly wiped my lips. I took a sip of water. I let the silence grow. Everyone was looking at me. Diana with expectation. Arthur with arrogance. Clara with shame. Julian with desperation. And then I spoke. My voice came out different. It was no longer timid. It was no longer small. It was firm, clear, cold. That's an interesting offer, Diana. Truly. Very generous of you. Diana smiled victoriously. I'm glad you see it that way. I nodded. But I have a few questions, just to understand clearly. Diana blinked. Of course. Ask whatever you want. I leaned forward slightly. How much would you consider a modest monthly allowance? $500? $1,000? Diana hesitated. Well, we were thinking around 500, maybe 700. It depends. I nodded. I see. $700 a month for me to disappear from my son's life. Diana frowned. I wouldn't put it like that. But yes, I replied. That's exactly how you put it. She adjusted herself in her chair. Eleanor, I don't want you to misunderstand. We just want to help. Of course, I said. Help. Like you helped with the down payment on the house. How much was that? $30,000? Diana nodded with pride. 40,000 actually. Ah, 40,000. How generous. And the honeymoon? 15,000, Diana said. It was a 3-week trip through Europe. Incredible, I replied. So you've invested about $55,000 in Julian and Clara. Diana smiled. Well, when you love your children, you don't skimp. I nodded slowly. You're right. When you love your children, you don't skimp. But tell me something, Diana. Did all that investment, all that money, buy you anything? Diana blinked, confused. What? Did it buy you respect? I continued. Did it buy you real love, or did it just buy obedience? The atmosphere changed. Diana stopped smiling. Excuse me? My tone sharpened. You've spent the whole night talking about money. about how much things cost, how much you've spent, how much you have, but you haven't asked a single time how I am, if I'm happy, if anything hurts, if I need company. You've only calculated what I'm worth, and apparently I'm worth $700 a month." Diana turned pale. "I didn't." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You did. From the moment I arrived, you've been measuring my worth with your wallet. And you know what I discovered, Diana? I discovered that the people who only talk about money are the ones who least understand its true value." Arthur intervened. "I think you're misinterpreting my wife's intentions." "Oh, really?" I looked directly at him. "And what are her intentions? To treat me with pity? To humiliate me throughout the entire dinner? To offer me a handout so I'll disappear?" Arthur opened his mouth but said nothing. Julian was pale. "Mom, please." I looked at him. "No, Julian, please, no. I'm done being quiet." I placed the napkin on the table. I leaned back in my chair. There was no more timidity in my posture, no more shrinking. I looked Diana directly in the eyes. She held my gaze for a second, then looked away, uncomfortable. Something had changed and she felt it. They all felt it. "Diana, you said something very interesting a moment ago. You said you admire women who struggle on their own, that they're brave." Diana nodded slowly. "Yes, I said that." "Then let me ask you something. Have you ever struggled on your own? Have you ever worked without your husband backing you up? Have you ever built something with your own two hands, without your family's money?" Diana stammered. I have my own accomplishments." "Like what?" I asked with genuine curiosity. "Tell me." Diana fixed her hair. "I manage our investments, I oversee properties, I make important decisions in our businesses." I nodded. "Businesses your husband built, properties you bought together, investments made with money he generated. Or am I wrong?" Arthur intervened, annoyed. "That's not fair. My wife works just as hard as I do." "Of course," I replied calmly. "I don't doubt that she works. But there's a difference between managing money that already exists and creating it from scratch. Between overseeing an empire you inherited and building it brick by brick, don't you think?" Diana pursed her lips. "I don't know where you're going with this, Eleanor." "Let me explain," I replied. 40 years ago, I was 23 years old. I was a secretary in a small company. I earned minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find. And I was alone. Completely alone. Julian stared at me. I had never told him this in such detail. I continued. "One day, I got pregnant. The father disappeared. My family turned their back on me. I had to decide whether to keep going or give up. I chose to keep going. I worked until the last day of my pregnancy. I went back to work 2 weeks after Julian was born. A neighbor watched him during the day. I worked 12 hours a day. I paused. I drank some water. No one spoke. But I didn't stay a secretary. I studied at night. I took courses. I learned English at the public library. I learned accounting, finance, management. I became an expert in things no one taught me. All on my own. All while raising a child alone. All while paying rent, food, medicine, clothes. Diana was staring at her plate. Her arrogance was beginning to crumble. And you know what happened, Diana? I got promoted, little by little, from secretary to assistant, from assistant to coordinator, from coordinator to manager, from manager to director. It took me 20 years. 20 years of non-stop work, of sacrifices you can't even imagine. But I did it. And do you know how much I earn now? I asked. Diana shook her head. $40,000 a month. The silence was absolute, as if someone had hit a pause button on the universe. Julian dropped his fork. Clara's eyes went wide. Arthur frowned in disbelief, and Diana froze with her mouth slightly open. $40,000, I repeated. Every month, for almost 20 years. That's nearly $10 million in gross income over my career, not counting investments, not counting bonuses, not counting company stock. Diana blinked several times. No, I don't understand. You earn $40,000 a month? That's right, I replied calmly. I am the Regional Director of Operations for a multinational corporation. I oversee 5 countries. I manage budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that affect more than 10,000 employees. I sign contracts you couldn't read without lawyers. And I do it every single day. Julian was pale. Mom, why did you never tell me? I looked at him tenderly. Because you didn't need to know, son. Because I wanted you to grow up valuing effort, not money. Because I wanted you to become a man, not an heir. Because money corrupts, and I wasn't going to let it corrupt you. But then, Clara whispered, why do you live in that small apartment? Why do you wear simple clothes? Why don't you have a luxury car? I smiled. Because I don't need to impress anyone. Because true wealth isn't for show. Because I learned that the more you have, the less you need to prove it. I looked at Diana. That's why I came dressed like this tonight. That's why I pretended to be poor. That's why I acted like a broken, naive woman. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors. And boy, did I see them, Diana. I saw them perfectly. Diana was red, with shame, with rage, with humiliation. This is ridiculous. If you earned that much money, we would know. Julian would know. Why would he think you're poor? Because I allowed him to, I answered. Because I never talked about my job. Because I live simply. Because the money I earn, I invest. I save it. I multiply it. I don't spend it on flashy jewelry or showing off in expensive restaurants. Arthur cleared his throat. Even so, this doesn't change the fact that you were rude. That you misinterpreted our intentions. Really? I stared at him. Did I misinterpret when you said I was a burden to Julian? Did I misinterpret when you offered to pay me $700 to disappear from his life? Did I misinterpret every condescending comment about my clothes, my job, my life? Arthur didn't answer. Neither did Diana. I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Let me tell you something that clearly no one has ever told you. Money doesn't buy class. It doesn't buy real education. It doesn't buy empathy. You have money, maybe a lot of it, but you don't have a single ounce of what really matters. Diana stood up too, furious. And you do? You, who lied, who deceived us, who made us look like fools? I didn't make you look like fools, I replied coldly. You took care of that all by yourselves. I just gave you the opportunity to show who you are, and you did, magnificently. Clara had tears in her eyes. Mother-in-law, I didn't know. I know, I interrupted her. You didn't know, but your parents knew what they were doing. They knew they were humiliating me, and they enjoyed it. Until they found out that the poor woman they look down on has more money than they do. And now they don't know what to do with that information. Diana was trembling. You have no right. I have every right, I answered. Because I am your son-in-law's mother. Because I deserve respect, not because of my money, not because of my job, but because I am a human being. Something you forgot during this entire dinner. Julian stood up. Mom, please, let's go. I looked at him. Not yet, son. I'm not finished yet. I looked at Diana one last time. You offered to help me with $700 a month. Let me make you a counteroffer. I will give you $1 million, right now, if you can prove to me that you have ever, in your lives, treated someone who had no money with kindness. Diana opened her mouth. She closed it. She said nothing. Exactly, I replied. You can't. Because to you, people are only worth what they have in the bank. And that's the difference between you and me. I built wealth. You just spend it. I earned respect. You buy it. I have dignity. You have bank accounts. I took my old fabric purse. I pulled out a credit card. Black, platinum. I dropped it on the table in front of Diana. This is my corporate card. Unlimited limit. Pay for dinner. All of it. With a generous tip. Consider it a gift. From a broke and naive mother. Diana stared at the card as if it were a venomous snake. Black, shiny, with my name engraved in silver letters. Eleanor Marquez, Regional Director. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked it up. She turned it over. She observed it. Then she looked at me. Her eyes no longer had that gleam of superiority. Now there was something different. something I never thought I'd see in her. Fear. "I don't need your money," she said in a broken voice. "I know," I replied, "but I didn't need your pity either. And yet you offered it to me all evening, so take it as a gesture of courtesy or education. Something you clearly didn't learn despite all your trips to Europe." Arthur tapped the table softly. "Enough. This has gotten out of hand. You are disrespecting us." "Respect," I repeated. "How interesting that you use that word now. Where was your respect when your wife asked me if my salary was enough to live on? Where was it when she suggested I was a burden to my son? Where was it when she offered to buy me off so I would disappear?" Arthur clenched his jaw. "Diana was just trying to help." "No," I corrected him. "Diana wanted to control. She wanted to make sure the poor mother didn't ruin her daughter's perfect image. She wanted to eliminate the weak link in the chain. The problem is, you picked the wrong link." End quote. I looked at Clara. Her head was down. Her hands were on her lap, trembling. "Clara," I said softly. She looked up. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know that my parents—" "Don't finish that sentence," I interrupted. "Because you did know. Maybe you didn't know about my money. But you knew what your parents are like. You know them. You know how they treat people they consider inferior, and you did nothing to stop them." Clara sobbed. "I wanted to say something, but they're my parents." "I know," I replied. "And Julian is my son. And still, I let him make his own decisions. I let him choose his life, his wife, his path, because that's how you love. With freedom, not with control, not with money, not with manipulation." Julian came to my side. "Mom, forgive me. Please, forgive me for never asking, for assuming, for thinking you were." His voice broke. I hugged him. "You don't have to apologize, son. I did what I did for a reason. I wanted you to be independent, to value the right things, to not depend on me financially, to build your own life. But you made me feel like I had to protect you," Julian said. "That I had to worry about you, that you were fragile." "I know," I answered. "And it wasn't wrong for you to think that, because that's how you learn to care, to worry about others, to be empathetic. Those are lessons money can't buy." Julian hugged me tight. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Diana was still standing, rigid, watching the scene with a mixture of confusion and contained rage. "This changes nothing," she finally said. "You lied. You deceived us. You came here with ulterior motives. You acted in bad faith." "That's true," I nodded. "I acted. I pretended to be something I'm not. Exactly what you do every single day." "What is that supposed to mean?" Arthur asked. "It means you hide behind your money, behind your jewelry, behind your trips, behind everything you can buy. But inside, you're empty. You don't have deep conversations. You don't have real interests. You have nothing to offer beyond a bank account." Diana laughed, a dry, bitter laugh. "Coming from someone who lied all night, that's hypocrisy." "Maybe," I replied. "But my lie exposed the truth, your truth. And now you can't hide. Now you know that I saw you, that I felt every comment, that I saved every insult disguised as advice, and that I will never forget it." The waiter approached timidly. "Excuse me, would you like anything else?" Arthur shook his head sharply. "Just the check." The waiter nodded and disappeared. Diana sat down again, defeated. Her posture was no longer elegant. It was the posture of someone who had just lost something important. And it wasn't money. It was power. "Eleanor," she said in a softer, less aggressive voice, "I don't want this to ruin the relationship between our families. Julian and Clara love each other. They have a life together. We can't let this—" I interrupted her. "Let this what? Ruin your plans? Expose what you really think? It's too late for that, Diana. The damage is done. But we can fix it," she insisted. "We can start over. We can—" "No," I cut her off firmly. "We can't. Because now I know who you are. And you know who I am. And that truth can't be erased with empty apologies or fake smiles. You treated me like dirt. And you did it with pleasure. With joy. Because you thought you could. Arthur cleared his throat. You're the one who came here lying. You provoked this situation. You're right, I nodded. I did provoke this. Because I needed to know. I needed to confirm what I already suspected. That you are not good people. That your money doesn't make you better. That you are exactly the kind of people who look down on others for not having the same. Diana wiped away a tear. We're not bad people. Perhaps not, I replied. But you are definitely not good. And there's a huge difference between those two things. The waiter returned with the check. He placed it in the center of the table. No one touched it. Diana looked at my black card still in her hands. Then she looked at me. I'm not using your card, she said. We will pay our own bill, as we always do. Perfect, I replied. Then keep that card as a souvenir, as a reminder that not everything is as it seems, that the woman you despised all night has more than you ever will. And I'm not just talking about money. Diana placed the card on the table. I don't want it, and I don't want your moral lesson either. I pushed it back towards her. Keep it anyway, because something tells me you're going to need it. Someday you're going to meet someone like me. Someone who pretends to be less than they are, and you're going to make the same mistake again, because people like you never learn. End quote. Arthur took out his wallet. He pulled out several credit cards. All gold, all shiny. He chose one and placed it on the check. The waiter took it and left. No one spoke during those minutes of waiting. The silence was thick, uncomfortable, heavy. Clara was crying silently. Julian was holding my hand. Diana was staring at the wall. Arthur was checking his phone to avoid eye contact. The waiter returned. Sir, your card was declined. Arthur looked up sharply. What? It was declined, the waiter repeated. Do you have another form of payment? Arthur turned red. That's impossible. That card has a very high limit. It must be a system error. The waiter shrugged. I can try again if you like. Arthur handed him another card. The waiter left. Diana looked nervously at her husband. What happened? I don't know, Arthur replied irritably. It must be a bank error. Maybe they froze the account for security. It happens sometimes when you travel. Oh, I nodded with feigned understanding. Of course, those things happen. How inconvenient. The waiter returned again. I'm sorry, sir. This one was declined too. Arthur stood up. This is ridiculous. I'm going to call the bank right now. He stormed out of the restaurant. Diana remained seated, ashamed, humiliated. This has never happened to us, she muttered. Never. What terrible timing, I commented without emotion. Julian looked at the check. Mom, I can. No, I interrupted him. You are not paying for anything. I took out my wallet, a simple old leather wallet. I took out another card. This one wasn't black. It was transparent, made of metal, heavy. A card that less than 1% of the people in the world have. I placed it on the table in front of Diana. She looked at it. Her eyes widened. She recognized what it was. That's a Centurion card. That's right, I replied. American Express. By invitation only. Minimum annual spending requirement of $250,000. $5,000 annual fee just to have it, and benefits you can never even imagine. Diana said nothing. The waiter took the card carefully, as if it were sacred. He returned in less than 2 minutes. Thank you, Miss Marquez. Everything is taken care of. Would you like the receipt? That's not necessary, I replied. The waiter nodded and left. Diana was still staring at the space where the card had been. I stood up. I took my old purse, my fabric bag. I looked at Diana one last time. The dinner was delicious. Thank you for the recommendation, and thank you for showing me exactly who you are. It saved me a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of future disappointments. Diana finally looked up. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from contained rage. This isn't over, she said with a trembling voice. You can't just humiliate us and walk out as if nothing happened. Clara is our daughter. Julian is our son-in-law. We are still going to be family. You're going to have to see us. I smiled. You're right. I am going to have to see you. At birthdays. At Christmases. at family gatherings. But now I'll see you differently. I'll no longer wonder what you think of me. I already know, and you will know that I know, and you will live with that. Every time you see me, every time you pretend to be kind, you will remember tonight. Arthur returned to the table. He had his phone in his hand. His face was pale. There's a problem with the accounts, he said. A temporary block. For security, it will be resolved tomorrow. He looked at the table. Did you pay? Yes, Diana answered without looking at him. She paid. Arthur looked at me. His pride was in tatters. Thank you, he muttered. It was barely audible. You're welcome, I replied. That's what family is for, isn't it? To help each other? Especially when someone needs a small monthly allowance. Say, $700. Or in this case, $1,800. What was the cost of this dinner? Arthur closed his eyes. Diana clenched her fists on her lap. Julian stepped forward. Mom, let's go, please, it's enough. I looked at him. You're right, it is enough. I turned to Clara. She was still crying silently. Clara, I said softly. She raised her head. You are not to blame for how your parents are. No one chooses their family. But you do choose how you act, how you treat others, how you will raise your own children someday. Clara nodded through her tears. I'm sorry, she whispered again. Don't apologize again, I told her. Just learn. Learn that money doesn't define people, that humility is not weakness, that respecting others costs nothing, and that if you ever have children, teach them to see people's hearts, not their bank accounts. Clara sobbed harder. Julian hugged her. Diana looked away. Arthur was checking his phone again, avoiding all eye contact. I headed for the exit. I took a few steps, then I stopped. I turned around one last time. Oh, Diana, one more thing. She looked at me. Remember when you said you speak 4 languages? Diana frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Just curious, I replied. In which of those 4 languages did you learn to be kind? Because clearly it wasn't in any of them. Diana opened her mouth, but no words came out. Exactly, I said. You can speak 100 different languages and still not say anything worth listening to. I walked out of the restaurant. Julian was walking by my side. The cool night air hit my face. I took a deep breath. I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Not a physical weight, an emotional one. The weight of pretending, of tolerating, of being silent. Julian took my arm. Mom, are you okay? Perfectly fine, I answered. Better than ever. And you? Julian sighed. I don't know. I'm processing everything. I can't believe you never told me about your job, about your money, about everything you accomplished. I stopped. I looked him in the eyes. Does it bother you? He shook his head quickly. No, of course not. I'm proud, incredibly proud. But I also feel foolish, blind. You're not foolish, I told him. You simply saw what I wanted you to see, and I did it on purpose. Because I needed you to grow up without depending on me, without feeling like you had a financial safety net waiting for you. I needed you to struggle, to work, to value every single thing you earned for yourself. Julian nodded. I get it. But now I also understand why you never complained, why you never asked for help, why you always seemed so calm. Because you didn't need anything. I smiled. I needed many things, son, just none of them could be bought with money. I needed to see you grow up, to see you become a good man, to see you make the right decisions. And you did, in your own way. Even marrying Clara? He asked in a faint voice. Even marrying Clara, I replied. She isn't her parents. She can learn. She can change. But that's up to her. And you, how you build your relationship, what values you choose to follow. Julian remained quiet, processing, thinking. A taxi pulled up in front of us. I had called it as we were leaving. I opened the door. Julian stopped me. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you do it? Why did you come pretending to be poor? Why not just tell them the truth from the beginning? I closed the taxi door. I turned to him. Because I needed to know, son. I needed to confirm if my suspicions were true. If Clara's family was really as I imagined. And unfortunately, I was right. Julian looked down. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize for them, I said, but you do have to decide what kind of husband you want to be, what kind of father you want to be someday. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, you just saw two very different ways of handling money and power. Your in-laws' way and mine. They use it to control, to humiliate, to feel superior. I use it to have freedom, to help without showing off, to live peacefully. You decide which path to follow. Julian nodded slowly. I understand. I opened the taxi door again. I got in. I rolled down the window. Julian approached. Mom, one last question. Go ahead. Are you ever going to forgive Diana and Arthur? I thought for a moment. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, I replied, nor does it mean allowing it to happen again. I might forgive them someday, when I see a real change, when they see people as people, not as numbers. But until then, I will simply be polite, distant, and extremely careful. And me? Julian asked. Do you forgive me? For not asking, for assuming, for allowing this scene to happen. I looked at him tenderly. Son, there's nothing to forgive. You did what you thought was right. You wanted your family to meet. That's beautiful. What happened after was not your fault. It was theirs. And a little bit mine, too, because I decided to play their game. Julian smiled faintly. You won. I won. I nodded. But I don't feel victorious. I feel tired and sad, because I confirmed something I didn't want to confirm. That there are people who will never change. That there are broken families even if they have money. That there are voids no bank account can fill. The taxi driver cleared his throat. Ma'am, are we going? Yes, I replied. Give me a second. I looked at Julian one more time. Go to Clara. Talk to her. Listen to her. Support her. But also be honest. Tell her how you felt tonight. Tell her what you expect from her family. And from her. Because if you don't set boundaries now, this will happen again. Over and over. I will, Julian promised. I love you, Mom, and I mean it more now than ever. Because now I know who you really are. And you're incredible. I smiled. I love you too, son. I always have. I always will. No matter how much money I have or don't have. Because love has no price. And that's a lesson Diana and Arthur will never learn. Julian stepped away from the taxi. I motioned to the driver. We can go. The taxi pulled away. I looked out the window. I saw Julian walking back to the restaurant. His shoulders slumped. Thoughtful. He was probably going back to find Clara, to face his in-laws, to have difficult conversations. And I felt proud. Because that meant he was maturing. That he was learning. That he was choosing to be better than the example he had just witnessed. The taxi moved through the illuminated city streets. I closed my eyes. I thought about everything that had happened, every word, every look, every moment of tension. And I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I had been too harsh, too cruel, too vengeful. But then I remembered every disguised insult, every condescending comment, every look of contempt, and I knew I hadn't. I hadn't been too anything. I had simply been honest. Finally, the taxi cut through the empty streets of the night. The lights from the buildings blurred past the window. I opened my old fabric bag and took out my phone. A simple phone. Nothing ostentatious. Nothing to draw attention. I had 3 unread messages. One from my assistant about a Monday meeting, another from a colleague congratulating me on a closed deal, and one from an unknown number. I opened the unknown message. It was from Clara. Mother-in-law, please forgive me. I didn't know my parents would be like that. I am so ashamed. I need to talk to you, please. I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about replying. Then I decided against it. Not yet. I needed time. She needed it too. Words rushed out of guilt rarely mean anything real. True change takes time. Reflection. Consistent action. I put the phone away. The taxi driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. Excuse me for asking, ma'am. Is everything all right? I looked up at him. Yes, everything's fine. Why? It's just that you got in very quiet. And usually, people coming out of that restaurant are happy, talking about how delicious dinner was. You came out looking like you'd been in a war. I smiled slightly. Something like that. Was it that obvious? He shrugged. I've been driving a taxi for 20 years. I've seen it all. Drunk people, people fighting, couples breaking up, families arguing. And you have that look. The look of someone who just said something they've been holding in for years. You're perceptive, I told him. It's my job, he replied. Besides, it helps pass the time. Do you want to talk about it? You don't have to. But sometimes it helps to tell a stranger, someone who won't judge you, someone who doesn't know you. I considered his offer. It was tempting, but I shook my head. Thank you, but I think I've talked enough for one day. He nodded. I understand, but let me tell you something. Whatever happened in there, you did the right thing. I know because you're calm, you're not crying, you're not yelling, you're processing. And that means you spoke your truth. And the truth always brings peace, even if it hurts. His words surprised me. He was an older man, maybe 60, with gray hair and worn hands, a simple man, like I was pretending to be. Do you believe in the truth? I asked him. I believe in honesty, he answered. Not always in the absolute truth, because the truth changes depending on who's telling it. But honesty doesn't. Honesty is saying things as you feel them, without masks, without lies. Even if it hurts, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it costs you something. I nodded. You're right. My wife always told me I was too direct, he continued. That I said things without a filter, that I hurt people without meaning to. And maybe she was right. But she also told me she never doubted me, because she knew what came out of my mouth was real. Not calculated, not manipulated, just real. I smiled. She sounds like a good woman. She was, he replied. Died 5 years ago. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. He shook his head. Don't be. We had 40 years together, 40 years of honesty, of fights, of making up, of laughter, of tears, and not a single day did I go to bed wondering what she was really thinking. Because she always said it, and so did I. That's a gift. You're right, I murmured. It is a gift. The taxi stopped at a red light. Can I ask you something personal? The driver said. Go ahead. Are you rich? The question took me by surprise. Not the question itself, but the direct way he asked it. Why do you ask? Because I picked you up from $1,000 a person restaurant, but you're dressed like someone who shops at discount stores. You have an old purse, worn shoes, but you talk like an executive. You move like someone with power, and you paid for my taxi with crisp new bills you took from a wallet that looks 20 years old. Observant, I commented. Part of the job, he repeated. So, are you? It depends on how you define rich, I answered. If you're talking about money, yes, I have enough, more than enough. If you're talking about happiness, then also yes, I have peace, health, a son I love, a job I'm passionate about. That makes me rich in many ways. He nodded, satisfied. I knew there was something. The truly rich people don't need to show it. The light turned green. The taxi moved forward. So what happened in that restaurant? He asked. If you don't mind me asking. I pretended to be poor, I replied, to see how they would treat me. He let out a laugh. Seriously? That's brilliant. And how did they treat you? Like dirt, I said without emotion. They humiliated me. They offered me handouts. They treated me as if I were invisible, less than human. He stopped laughing. I'm sorry. That must have hurt. A little, I admitted. But it also confirmed something for me. That I was right about those people. That they weren't worth my time. That they didn't deserve my respect. And now they know it. Now they know who I am. And they'll have to live with that shame. The driver whistled softly. I bet that was epic. It was. I smiled. It definitely was. We arrived at my building. An old building. Middle class. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, but comfortable. Safe. Home. The driver parked. He looked at the building. You live here? I live here, I confirmed. He shook his head in amazement. You really are something special. Most people with money move to expensive areas, to buildings with doormen, with private security, with a gym and a pool. You live like a normal person." "I am a normal person," I replied. "I just have more money than most. But that doesn't make me different. It doesn't make me better. Money is just a tool, not an identity." He smiled. "I wish more people thought like that. The world would be a better place." Or die. I took out my wallet. "How much is it?" $30, he replied. I gave him a $100 bill. "Keep the change." "Ma'am, this is too much." "It's not," I said. "You listened to me. You gave me perspective. You reminded me that there are still good people out there. That's worth more than $70. He took the bill carefully. "Thank you. Really. Thank you," I replied. "And take care of that honesty. It's rare. It's valuable. Don't lose it." End quote. "I won't," he promised. I got out of the taxi. I closed the door. He rolled down the window. "Ma'am, one last thing." "Yes?" "Whatever happened tonight, don't regret it. Because people like you, people who speak the truth even when it hurts, are the ones who change the world. Little by little, one conversation at a time." I smiled. "Thank you. I'll remember that." The taxi drove away. I stood in front of my building, looking up, at my 5th-floor window. The light was off, dark, silent, waiting for me. I went into the building. I walked up the stairs. I never used the elevator. I preferred to walk, to stay active. I reached my door. I took out my keys, the same keys I'd had for 15 years. I opened it. The apartment was cold. Empty. I turned on the light. Everything was in its place. The simple living room, the small kitchen, the dining room with mismatched chairs, the walls without expensive art. And I felt at peace. Because this place was mine. Truly mine. Not bought to impress. Not decorated to show off. Just a space where I could be myself. Without masks. Without pretenses. I took off my old shoes. I took off the wrinkled gray dress. I changed into comfortable clothes, old pajamas, soft, familiar. I made myself some tea. I sat on the sofa. I turned on the television, the news. Nothing interesting. I turned it off. I sat in silence, thinking, processing, feeling. And for the first time in many years, I felt completely free. Free from pretending, free from being silent, free from tolerating, free from being less than I was. Because that night, I didn't just expose Diana and Arthur. I also freed myself from expectations, from judgments, from the need to hide who I was. And that was priceless. More than any number in my bank account. My phone vibrated. Another message, this time from Julian. "Mom, did you get home okay?" I smiled. I replied quickly, "Yes, son. I got home perfectly fine. I'm home, resting." "Oh." His response was immediate. "I love you. Thank you for everything. For being who you are. For teaching me. For never giving up." I closed my eyes. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Not of sadness. Of relief. Of love. Of gratitude. I replied, "I love you too. Always." I put the phone aside. I drank my tea. I looked around my simple apartment. My sanctuary. My truth. And I smiled. Because at the end of the day, it didn't matter how much money I had. It didn't matter how high I had climbed in my career. The only thing that mattered was this moment, this peace, this honesty with myself. I woke up early on Sunday. As always, 40 years of work had trained me to get up with the Sunday. Even though it was my day off, my body no longer knew how to sleep in. I made coffee, strong, no sugar. I sat by the window with a hot mug in my hands. I watched the city wake up, vendors opening their stalls, people walking somewhere. Life went on, as always. Indifferent to personal dramas. My phone started to ring. It was a familiar number. "Julian," I answered. "Good morning, son." His voice sounded tired. "Mom, I need to talk to you." "Did something happen?" "A lot," he replied. "Last night, Clara and I talked for hours. Her parents were there too. It was intense." I took a sip of coffee. "Tell me." Julian took a deep breath. After you left, I went back to the restaurant. Diana and Arthur were still there, waiting for their cards to work. It was humiliating for them. Clara was a mess, crying, and I was furious, more furious than I've been in years. I waited in silence. He continued. I told them everything I felt during that dinner. I told them I was ashamed of them, that they treated my mother like dirt, that their behavior was unacceptable, that I wasn't going to tolerate it ever again. And what did they say? I asked. At first, Diana tried to defend herself. She said they just wanted to protect Clara, that they wanted to make sure I had a stable family, that they had no bad intentions. Arthur said I was exaggerating, that it was a normal dinner, that your reaction was disproportionate. I squeezed the mug in my hands. Typical. But then Clara spoke up, Julian continued. She told her parents they were wrong, that they had been cruel, that she had seen every comment, every look, every disguised insult, and that she was ashamed to be their daughter in that moment. His voice broke. Mom, I've never seen Clara stand up to her parents like that. I smiled slightly. That's good. It means she's waking up. Diana became hysterical, Julian said. She started yelling that Clara was ungrateful, that they had sacrificed everything for her, that they had given her the best life, that she had no right to judge them. Arthur backed her up. He said we were being manipulated by you, that you had planned the whole thing to make them look bad. I let out a dry laugh. Of course, it's my fault. That's what made them even angrier, Julian said. I told them they were right, that you did plan everything, but that they fell into the trap because that's who they really are, because they really do treat people they consider inferior badly, that you just gave them the chance to show themselves, and they did it perfectly. Well said, I murmured. Thanks. I learned it from you. There was a silence. Then Julian continued. Mom, I need you to know something. Last night I made a decision. Clara and I are going to set boundaries with her parents. We're not going to cut off the relationship, but we're going to set clear rules. No comments about money, no comparisons, no trying to control our lives. And if they can't respect that, then they'll have to accept the consequences. And they accepted? I asked. No, he answered. They left furious. They said we were ungrateful, that one day we would regret it, that when we needed help, they wouldn't be there. Arthur said he was going to reconsider his will. Diana said Clara had chosen the wrong family. I shook my head. Emotional blackmail. The last resort of people with no arguments. Exactly, Julian said. But it didn't work. Clara stood her ground. So did I. They left the restaurant without saying goodbye, without looking back. And honestly, Mom, I felt relieved, like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. That's because it was, I told him. You lifted the weight of living under their expectations, under their control. Now you can build your life the way you want to, not the way they dictate. Thank you, Mom, Julian said, his voice emotional. Thank you for doing what you did last night. I know it was hard. I know it was uncomfortable, but we needed to see it. I needed to see who they really were, and Clara needed to see there was another way to live, a more honest way, more authentic. You're welcome, son. I just did what I thought was right. There's something else, Julian said. Clara wants to come see you. She wants to apologize in person. She wants to talk to you, not as a daughter-in-law trying to get on your good side, but as a woman trying to learn. What do you think? I thought for a moment. Tell her she can come. But not today. Give her a few days. Let her process. Let her think carefully about what she wants to say. Rushed apologies are hollow. The ones that take time are real. I'll tell her, Julian promised. Mom, one more question. How are you? After everything, how do you feel? I looked out the window. The sun was fully up now. The day had officially begun. I'm fine, I answered. Better than fine. I'm at peace. Because I finally said everything I needed to say, and I don't regret a thing. I'm glad to hear that, Julian said. I love you. Our day. I love you too. Get some rest. See you soon. I hung up the phone. I finished my coffee. I stood up. I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. Go for a walk. With no destination, no rush, Just walk and think. I got dressed in comfortable clothes, old jeans, a simple blouse, worn sneakers. I took my keys. I left. The streets were full of life. Families strolling, children running, couples holding hands, vendors selling food. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air. I walked through the nearby park. I sat on a bench. I watched the people pass by. And I realized something. Most of these people probably didn't have much money. They lived paycheck to paycheck. They worked hard. They struggled every day. But they smiled. They hugged. They enjoyed the moment. And then I thought of Diana and Arthur. With all their money, their properties, their trips, their jewelry. Were they happy? Truly? Or were they just busy trying to prove something? Trying to fill a void with material things? Trying to buy themselves worth, respect, love, things that have never been for sale, that never will be. An elderly woman sat down next to me. "Good morning," she said with a smile. "Good morning," I replied. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she commented. "Very beautiful," I agreed. She took some bread out of her bag. She started feeding the pigeons. "I come here every Sunday," she said. "It's my moment of peace, before the week gets crazy again." "I understand that," I said. I needed a moment of peace, too. "Tough week?" she asked. "Something like that," I answered. "More like a tough night." She nodded wisely. "Sometimes a single night can change everything." "You're right," I murmured. She looked at me. "Can I give you some unsolicited advice?" "Go ahead," I smiled. She pointed to the pigeons. "Look at those birds. Some are big, some are small. Some have pretty feathers. Others have tattered ones. But they all eat from the same bread. They all share the same space. Not one of them thinks it's better than another." "That's a nice metaphor," I said. "It's not a metaphor," she replied. "It's the truth. We humans are the only animals who invent false hierarchies, who measure worth with external things. The pigeons don't do that. They just live. They just are. We should learn from them." I smiled widely. "You are absolutely right. You should teach a class to some people I know." She laughed. "Oh, honey, at my age I don't teach classes anymore. I just observe, and I share what I see. But most people don't listen. They're too busy running, buying, competing, forgetting that in the end we all end up in the same place, with or without money, with or without jewelry, with or without properties. We all end up as dust." "How philosophical. How realistic," she corrected. "I've lived 82 years. I've seen it all. And I can tell you something. The most miserable people I ever knew were the ones who had the most. Because it was never enough. They always wanted more. They were always competing, always comparing, and they died without ever having really lived, without ever having really loved, without ever having really been." Her words resonated deep within me, as if she had touched on something I already knew but hadn't articulated. "Thank you," I told her, "for sharing that." She patted my hand. "You're welcome, honey. And remember, it doesn't matter how much you have or don't have. What matters is how you treat others. Because that stays. That transcends. That's the only inheritance worth leaving." She stood up slowly. She put her empty bag away. She waved goodbye. "Have a beautiful Sunday." "You too," I replied. I watched her walk away. A small woman, bent with age, in old clothes and worn shoes, but with more wisdom than all the Dianas and Arthurs of the world combined. And I felt grateful. Grateful for that encounter, for that reminder, for that simple and powerful truth. I stayed on the bench a while longer, thinking, feeling, processing everything that had happened, and I came to a conclusion. I regretted nothing, not a single word, not a single action. Because everything I did last night was necessary. It was liberating. It was honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, is always the right path. 3 days passed before Clara knocked on my door. 3 days of silence, of processing, of reflection. When I heard the doorbell that Wednesday afternoon, I knew who it was. I opened it. There she was. No makeup. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in jeans and a plain blouse. No jewelry. No heels. She looked vulnerable, real, different from the woman I had seen in the restaurant. "Mother-in-law," she said in a low voice. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. "Come in." She entered slowly, looking around, observing my apartment with new eyes. The simple living room, the old furniture, the walls without expensive decor. She sat on the sofa when I motioned for her to. I sat across from her, waiting, not pushing, letting her find her words. "I don't know where to start," she said finally. "Start wherever you feel you should," I replied. She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize, but not just with words. I came to explain why my parents are the way they are, and why I stayed silent for so long." I listened quietly. Clara continued, her voice trembling. "My parents grew up poor, in a small village in Asia, without electricity, without running water, working in the field since they were children. They watched their own parents die young from lack of medicine, from lack of money. They went hungry, they suffered, and they promised themselves they would never be poor again, that they would do whatever it took to get out of there." I nodded. "I understand. That explains a lot." "They worked like animals," Clara continued. "They saved every penny. They migrated looking for opportunities. Arthur built his business from nothing, literally from nothing. And when they started to make money, they never forgot what it was like to have none. That's why they talk about it so much, why they measure everything by that standard. Because for them, money means survival, security, never going back to that dark place." "It's understandable," I said. "Trauma does strange things to people." Clara nodded. "But that doesn't justify how they treated you. I know that. And I want you to know that I saw everything. Every comment, every look, every insult. And I stayed quiet because I've spent my whole life doing that. Staying quiet, accepting, letting them control everything. Because they taught me that to contradict them was betrayal. It was ingratitude." "And now?" I asked. "Now I understand I was wrong," she replied. "That love isn't control, that family isn't blind obedience, that I can love them and still disagree with them. Julian helped me see that. You helped me see that night in the restaurant, when you revealed yourself, when you told them everything. It was like a blindfold was removed from my eyes." Clara wiped her tears. "I always knew something was wrong. I always felt the way they measured people was wrong. But I convinced myself it was me, that I was too sensitive, that I didn't understand the world. But you showed me I wasn't, that there's another way to live, a way where money doesn't define your worth, where humility is strength, where authenticity is wealth." I took a sip of water. "Clara, I didn't come that night to change you. I came to protect myself, to know who I was dealing with." "And 8. "I know," she answered. "And I thank you for that. Because your brutal honesty saved me. It saved me from becoming my mother, from perpetuating that cycle, from teaching my future children that people are worth what they have. I don't want that. I don't want to be that." "And your parents?" I asked. "How are they after all this?" Clara sighed. "Furious, hurt, humiliated. Diana hasn't spoken to me in 3 days. Arthur sent me a text saying I had disappointed him, that I had chosen strangers over my own blood, that I would regret it one day." She paused. "And you know what's strange? I don't feel bad. I feel free." "That's good," I said. "It means you made the right decision." Clara nodded. "Julian and I set boundaries. We told them they can be part of our lives, but only if they respect us, if they respect our decisions, if they stop trying to control us with money or emotional blackmail. And if they can't do that, then they'll have to accept a distant relationship." "How did they take that?" I asked. "Badly," Clara replied. "Diana said we were ungrateful, that they had sacrificed everything for me. Arthur threatened to disinherit me, to cut off all financial help, as if that's the only thing that matters to us, as if our love for them depends on their money." And that's when I realized. They really believe that. They really think their value is in their wallet. End of. "It's sad," I commented. "Very sad," Clara agreed. "Because they have so much, and they enjoy nothing. They just accumulate, compete, show off. But they never stop to ask themselves if they're happy, if they have peace, if they have real connections with people. They just count their properties and feel victorious, while inside, they're empty. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked directly at me. "Mother-in-law, I want to ask you something. Go ahead. I want to learn from you. I want you to teach me how to live with dignity, how to be rich without needing to show it, how to have peace in the middle of chaos, how to be strong without being cruel. Because that night, I saw something in you that I never saw in my parents. I saw class. I saw real power. I saw a woman who didn't need to shout to be heard." I smiled tenderly. "Clara, I can't teach you that. That's learned by living, by making mistakes, by falling, by getting back up. The only thing I can do is share my experience and tell you that the path isn't easy, that you'll face criticism, judgments, people who won't understand why you live differently. But if you stay true to yourself, if you live by your values, you will find peace, and that peace is worth more than any number." "I want to try," Clara said. "I want to be better, not just for Julian, for me, because I deserve to live without that constant pressure, without that need to impress, without that fear of not being enough." "Then do it," I told her. "But don't do it all at once. Do it little by little. Start by questioning your habits, your purchases, your motivations. Ask yourself before every decision, is this for me or for others? Does this bring me peace or just appearance?" Clara nodded, taking mental notes. "And my parents? Do you think they'll ever change?" I looked at her honestly. "I don't know. Change requires you to recognize a problem, and they don't believe they have one. They believe the world is wrong, that people are ungrateful, that they are victims. Until they see that, no change is possible. But you can change. You can break the cycle." "I will," she promised. "With Julian's help, and I hope with your guidance too." "You don't need my guidance," I replied. "You just need your internal compass, that voice that tells you what's right and what's wrong, that voice you silenced for years to please your parents. Listen to it, trust it, follow it." Clara wiped away her last tears. "Thank you, mother-in-law, for everything, for your patience, for your honesty, for not giving up on us." "There's nothing to thank me for," I said. "Just promise me one thing. When you have children, teach them the value of people. Not the price. Teach them empathy, humility, kindness. Things that don't cost money but are worth everything." "I promise," Clara said firmly. "I promise with all my heart." We hugged. A real hug. Warm, honest, no acting, no masks, just two women connecting as human beings. Clara left an hour later. Lighter, freer, with hope in her eyes. I closed the door behind her. I sat back down on my sofa. I looked around my simple apartment, and I smiled. Because this was enough. This was everything. An honest space. An authentic life. Real relationships. I didn't need more. I never needed more. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Julian. "Mom, Clara told me about her visit. Thank you for having her, for listening to her, for giving her a chance. I love you more than words can express." I replied simply, "I love you too, Son. Always." I put the phone aside. I made tea. I sat by the window. I watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Real wealth isn't about how much you have. It's about how much you enjoy what you have, how much peace you feel, how many genuine people surround you, how many times you can look in the mirror and be proud of who you are. Diana and Arthur had millions, but I had this tranquility, this authenticity, this pure love from my son, and that made me infinitely richer than them. I never pretended to be poor again. I didn't need to. I had learned what I needed to learn. I had seen what I needed to see, and I had freed what I needed to free. Diana and Arthur remained who they were. Rich in money, poor in spirit. But that was no longer my problem. I had spoken my truth. I had set my boundaries. I had protected my peace. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to pretend who I was. I just was. Eleanor, mother, executive, woman, survivor, fighter, rich in every way that truly mattered. And that was more than enough. It was everything.